Welcome to Larry the Alchemist, and welcome to another edition of Sabbath Sunday. This is where Darren and I get together with you on Sundays to talk all things Black Sabbath. Darren and I have a Black Sabbath podcast that I will link in the description down below that you can check out. Here, Darren and I going on at great lengths about all the Black Sabbath and solo albums related in the Black Sabbath orbit. Okay, so for today's episode, last week we ranked the songs in the first Black Sabbath album, and now we're going to do the same thing with Paranoid. Like last week, we're not going to be dealing with these extra titles, Luke's Wall, Jack the Stripper. Those are all just part of Luke's Walls, part of War Pigs. Jack the Stripper is part of Fairies Wear Boots. All right, so we got 8 songs to pick from. We're going to go from our least favorite to our favorite. Now, before we start though, somebody left a really interesting comment when we did our last one with the self-titled album, and he said, when you do these things, are you ranking them by how you felt when you first heard these songs, when you were first getting into it, or are you ranking how you feel now? And for me personally, I try to go somewhere in the middle, because I think he has a very good point. And this is, I think, relevant with an album like this, because this has got some of Black Sabbath's most played songs, whether it's in concert or on radio. So it's easy to have a burnout factor here with some of the songs on Paranoid. When you're talking about the Tony Martin years, that's not really the case. But here with Paranoid, it's easy to understand how somebody could say they're burnt out on some of these songs, or just this album in general. So that was a good question. And for me, I go somewhere in the middle. I don't go how I thought like the first week that I had Paranoid, because there are some songs that I have to grow into, like when we did our self-titled one, Wicked World. If you asked me when I was 11 years old, Wicked World would have been a little lower on my list, but I grew to appreciate Wicked World as time went on. But I also don't think how I think right now, where maybe Paranoid isn't necessarily the first Black Sabbath album I reach for most frequently in this day and age. I still do play it, but I tend to gravitate more towards the albums that I haven't heard as much, or I'm not quite as burnt out on. So I go somewhere in the middle, where I've had enough experience with a record that I feel like I've grown with it. I can appreciate it. I'm not too young and naive with it, and I'm not too burnt out with it. So what about you, Darren? What's your thinking when it comes to these rankings?
Part of it's personal, part of it's from my vantage point as to where I am now with this album. I have spent most of my life with this album. I got this album when I was about 10 years old. So I've spent 43 years with this album. And I've heard all these songs a million times. I still love the album. Over the course of time, my attitude towards different songs has changed. Sometimes I've gone away from certain songs and come back to it. This is a very iconic album. It's probably the Black Sabbath album that, even if you're not really a diehard Black Sabbath fan, if you're a hard rock fan, or if you're just a rock fan in general, you might have this album in your collection because it has the big hits. So it's an iconic album in that regard. It's classic rock. As far as any Black Sabbath album could lend itself to classic rock, this is that album. And consequently, we've heard these songs so many times. So this is where I am with it. But I try to be objective, and I try to look at the album from the standpoint of where is it relative to rock and roll history, or where is it relative to the world of heavy metal or hard rock, or how does it, when I say objective, it's to qualify the songs on their own merit, not by the amount of exposure or the reputation that they've had. So that's how I base my list. My favorite song isn't number one. The song I picked for number one is what I think is the most important song on the album. So I try to be objective in that regard. But by the same token, my least favorite song is not necessarily a bad song, but it's the song that I am most burned out on. It's the song probably I can listen to satellite radio and I will almost never change the channel if a Black Sabbath song is on. But there's a couple that I will. And my least favorite song on Paranoid, I might as well just start. Number 8 for me is Iron Man. I am burned out on Iron Man. I don't think that I will ever come back around to being enthusiastic about Iron Man the way that I was when I was 10 years old. I've just heard it too many times. Beyond that, I've also heard too much music beyond that time. I've, and as it rates as a song, with the way that and we've talked about this when we talked about this a lot of times on various other subjects, but this is a recurring theme. The way that Ozzy can sometimes craft some amazing melodies, and then other times he'll just sing along with the riff. Iron Man, he's just locked in with the riff. So there isn't a lot about this song that sort of unfolds as you grow with it. It's there. It's always going to pretty much sound the same. You may tune into some different expressions with the guitar solo or something, or you may listen a little bit more closely to the bass line or maybe Bill's drums, but the main part of the song is just a constant, and once you've heard enough of it, that's where you are, and that's that's pretty much where I am with Iron Man. I will change the channel when Iron Man comes on the radio.
When you hear the boom,
I
boom.
mean, not all the time, but a lot of the times if if I hear Iron Man, this is and like Boys for Cult, Godzilla. I mean, it's the same way. I mean,
every band probably we could pick. A song that the boys are back in town, or stuff. All right. Well, my number 8 again. I'm kind of approaching this sort of where was I in the middle with this record, the middle of my life with this record before I was burnt out when it wasn't new. So number 8 for me is Rat Salad. And I love the intro and everything. I love the first part of the song, but honestly, drum solos on studio albums. Sorry, Darren, I know you're a drummer. Drum solos on studio albums, drum solos on live albums, I don't even like. In fact, I was listening to Made in Japan today, and I really tried to get through the mule without skipping. And I was just like, wow, does anybody sit and listen to this? Every time they listen to this, I couldn't make it. In Rat Salad, I love that riff in the beginning. I love the jam, but honestly, a lot of times once the drum solo starts, I just hit fast forward and jump to the next song. It's cool. I love it. It was the thing to do at the time. I just mentioned the Mule from Deep Purple, Cream, Ginger Baker had Toad. John Bonham, of course, had Moby Dick. So it was the thing that everybody was doing back then. And love Bill Ward, but if it's the only, it's a drum solo on a studio album. So
yeah. So that's your number 8. Okay, so my number 7 is Planet Caravan. I like the song. I don't drop the needle on it. It isn't something that I think, oh, you know what? I haven't heard Planet Caravan in a long time. I'm going to go home and listen to it. It's not one of the songs that I think of when I feel like I haven't revisited Paranoid recently. The song that pops into my mind isn't Planet Caravan. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, to me, it's pretty much filler. And as filler, it's a great segue from song to song. And while the album is playing, and in some ways, this is kind of similar to the first Black Sabbath album. The songs have a great sequence. They flow into one another. And it's hard to take something out of this context and hold it up by itself and qualify it and say, well, how does this rank? Because, I mean, realistically, they all kind of rank the way that they're set up in the album. And in the comments on our Black Sabbath self-titled ranking, somebody mentioned that it was impossible for them to rank the songs because they are all integrated the way that they are on the album.
Yeah.
So I get that. And Planet Caravan is in a similar fashion nestled in the sequence of the album, the same way that most of the songs on the self-titled Black Sabbath album are. But to do this, you kind of have to take it song by song and take them apart and qualify them individually. And so when I qualify the song Planet Caravan individually, it's not as strong as some of the others. So it falls at number 7 for me on my list.
Okay, my number 7 is the same, Planet Caravan. For all the reasons you said, it works in the flow of the record, but kind of on its own. It's not really like if it was on a greatest hits package or something, it would probably be out of place. And curiously, I'm just thinking of this now. It lands kind of early on the record. It comes in at number 3, which is just interesting. It kind of feels like it should be a side 2 type of song because it's so different from everything else. I do love Iommi's jazzy guitar solo and everything, and when I'm in the mood to listen to this record from beginning to end, I enjoy it because of where it sits in the sequence and the way it offsets and gives a different mood to this record. But just kind of on its own, it's got to land at number 7 for me. So, okay, number 6.
Number 6 for me is Rat Salad. I am a drummer. Bill Ward is probably, if he's not my favorite drummer, he's definitely in my top 5. Sometimes the list changes. Most of the times it's John Bonham, but at times it's Bill Ward. So I like the way Bill Ward plays. We did our show on Bill Ward a couple weeks ago, and I went through all the things that I like about Bill Ward. I like how he reacts to the music, that nothing really feels like it's scripted. Sure, there's certain things that he knows he's going to do before he does them, but a lot of times it seems like he's just drawn by the energy of the music and it just comes through in his playing. Likewise with Rat Salad, I could hear a lot of spontaneity, and it's probably one of the only songs on Paranoid that I really get the feeling like you're listening to a band that's live. And a lot of it's because of the way that I just can tell that Bill is just spontaneously playing these drum parts. There's a couple things he does, a couple patterns that you could tell he's practiced for a while, that he's pretty confident with that, but most of it he's just kind of going for it. I like the riff that it starts out with. I think it's pretty cool. I like the structure of it. I like the fact that they gave Bill some space to express himself. I think that's pretty cool. Second album, now they turn it over to Bill. And so it also enables the album to feel like it's kind of a live show, because you mentioned you don't necessarily enjoy hearing drum solos on live albums. Well, live albums, obviously, recording of a live show, so you probably don't really appreciate when the drummer does a solo during the band set. Maybe that's the time that you go to the bathroom or something, or you go and get a refreshment. With me, it's like when I'm sitting there at the edge of my seat. But the thing about it is that it's part of the live show. It was kind of one of those things where you could, when you listen to live albums of the 70s, you'd hear the drum solo. The drummer would do a solo. And so even though this is a studio album, it was obviously recorded in the studio, it does kind of give you the feeling like it's a live album. Like this is the band playing in the studio, they're recording their songs. So I like that. I like that Rat Salad brings that element into the studio album. And I like Bill's playing, and I like the structure of it. So number 6 for me, it's Rat Salad.
Okay, number 6 for me is Iron Man. And it's kind of funny, as I was making this list, I was thinking that, I never disliked Iron Man, but there was never really, and it's not this low on my list because I'm burnt out on it. I've just never been a big fan of Iron Man. When I was 10 years old, I thought the I am Iron Man voice thing at the beginning was cool, but it was just never one of my favorite Sabbath songs. I always found it a little too plodding. I like the jammy part where they go into double time and Iommi's soloing and everything. And the end of the song, I always liked the end of the song, but I thought just kind of the verses and everything in it was just a little too plodding. And like you said, the way Ozzy just doubles the riff there. It's never really been a favorite Black Sabbath song of mine. And honestly, if I could have dropped this down lower, I almost had this at number 7 for me. And again, it's not because of burnout factor. It's just because it's just not one of their best songs. You mentioned Blue Oyster Cult before. It's like Godzilla. Godzilla is not Blue Oyster Cult's best song by a long shot, but it's one of their more recognizable songs, so everybody associates it with them. And it's kind of like Black Sabbath or Aqualung to Jethro Tull. It's like everybody associates that song with them, and it's most Tull fans or most BOC fans would tell you that those songs, a lot of Sabbath fans would probably say, yeah, Iron Man is not one of Black Sabbath's best songs. It wouldn't even break my top 10. I don't even know if it would break my top 20, ranking of Sabbath songs. So Iron Man lands at Thuds at number 6 for me.
I mean, it obviously does have a strong appeal. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in a radio staple. It wouldn't be one of the songs that always usually winds up on a best of, or it's one of the songs that people recognize about Black Sabbath. It's just casual fans. So it does have merit, I suppose. But I often think that when I hear it on the radio, it's like, wow, why are you playing Iron Man? Certainly there's something you could take off of Volume 4, or a deep cut off of Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and but Iron Man is the song. It's apparently it's the song that people want to hear. Number 5 for me is Electric Funeral. Could have ranked a little higher, but it didn't. And the reason is because when it's compared to the remaining songs on the album, I mean, the remaining songs, the songs that are above this, are unquestionably great songs, for a lot of different reasons, for the way that the songs are structured, for the way that they're iconic, that they're also hit songs, in the way that they probably have sold the album. Electric Funeral, I don't think has been the reason why people bought Paranoid. But when you have the album Paranoid, the virtue of Electric Funeral is that it is so dark. When I first heard the song, it kind of took me back. It was just the guitar tone, that wah drenched guitar tone. I mean, it was so heavy. And there's, up to that point, there was hooks, there was choruses, there was things about the songs that, while the songs were heavy, there was a little bit of levity, for lack of a better word, within all the songs up to that point. When Electric Funeral comes in, there was very little levity. It is just a slab of heavy, distorted, heavy doom rock before there really was the title doom rock. So it's not at number 5 for lack of it being a great song. It's more at number 5 because the songs that come above it are what I consider to be more iconic. But I do love the song, but unfortunately, for the way that it's constructed, it just falls below the remaining songs on the album for me. So
so for my 5 and the rest of my list here, this is really, I have no qualms with any of these songs. They're all great songs, and I could really probably flip everything except my number 1. I was pretty confident about what I put down as number 1, but really 5 through 2 could have flipped around. These are all great for me, but number 5 is going to be Hand of Doom. I mean, no complaints about the song. I love Geezer's bass intro there. I like the lyrics. The lyrics fit the mood of the song. It has a very sort of ominous intro. The way the guitar jumps in and the way it gets heavy, that double time part is really, really cool. But again, we're in 10 out of 10 territory really from here out for me with these songs. So I just had to put it a little bit lower because some of the ones I put above it just have more immediate impact for me. So Hand of Doom at number 5 for me.
Okay, well, number 4 for me is Hand of Doom. Ranks a little bit higher than Electric Funeral, mostly because of the dynamics of the song. I think it's a well-constructed song. The subject matter, I think that the way that the song flows, the peaks and valleys, the different progressions, the transitions from part to part, It really illustrates the subject matter really well. So I think it's a pretty kind of one of the more mature songs on the album, and certainly more so than Iron Man. Um, and it's, as far as the songwriting is concerned, it's one of the better written songs. Everybody plays really well on it. The way that Ozzy sings the lyrics gives it a creepy vibe, and it rises up, and then it has a different energy. There's just different expressions, and I can appreciate that. And this is one of the songs that when I first got Paranoid, I didn't really gravitate towards, but I do now. And more often when Hand of Doom, when I'm listening to Paranoid and Hand of Doom comes on, I really enjoy it, probably more than most of the other songs on the album at this point. So, but to be objective, again, kind of it has to come down a little bit lower than the remaining songs at this point,
Yeah.
the end of the album.
Yeah, it is a
Everything-
really strong deep cut. It's a really strong
Yeah,
deep record.
it's called a deep cut, sure.
Yeah. Okay, my number 4 is Fairies Wear Boots. And when you think of the songs that you might hear on the radio from this record, this is one of them. And this is one that I think should have got more airplay. It should have got more airplay than Iron Man, because it's a really interesting song with the intro and Bill Ward's drum fills and the way it changes feel when it goes into that boom, bottom, boom. The verse riff is just, what Black Sabbath was able to do. We did our Bill Ward episode and talked about this sort of secret formula of the way they're able to shift feels. The feel at the beginning of the song is has a certain swing to it, and then it goes into the more straight ahead hard rocking verse. I love Iommi's outro solo on this when he starts playing that that line is iconic. Just great playing from Iommi in general all over this. That guitar solo he plays at the beginning of the song is very, you couldn't take it out of the song. It's like part of the song, the melody that he plays. Ozzy's lyrics are interesting and fun. As a young kid, I had no idea what any of this meant, but he's got a good melody line, and he's singing with a lot of aggression, and just the band is just locked in and grooving really, really hard. And I just think it's a really interesting song, and a song that Sabbath doing this type of thing is what really separated them from a lot of other bands. They were heavy, they were dark, but they also had this groove and this swing and this ability to switch feels within a song multiple times within a song. It was really like a sort of their superpower, if you will. So number 4 for me, Fairies Wear Boots.
Yeah, Fairies Wear Boots is number 3 for me. I was amazed by the song the first time I heard it. Once I got over the immediate effect of songs like, well, War Pigs and Paranoid and Hand of Doom, and the energy of Rat Salad, Fairies Wear Boots was one that I really listened to. The way that it's written, the very first riff is really interesting. It almost has kind of a progressive rock vibe to it, in the way that it just moves from part to part, and it's all so well constructed. And whereas you have something like Iron Man, and it's very basic and it's very kind of brutish, you have Fairies Wear Boots that has it's more elegant, I guess, for lack of a better word. It has such a really dynamic flow to it. But it's one I listen to, and I really like Hand of Doom. I can listen to now, and I never get burned out on it. I always enjoy listening to Fairies Wear Boots. It's not to say that I always hear something different. Sometimes I do. It depends. But I just enjoy the song. I enjoy the way that the song was written. I like it, just the way that it's constructed, and like Ozzy's melodies, and Tony's riffs, Bill's drums, Geezer's bass. It's a perfect song. It's certainly one of the better songs for me on Paranoid. But I did rank it at number 3, and that's because the 2 remaining songs I just think are just undeniably iconic. So number 3, Fairies Wear Boots.
Okay, number three for me, I think, is one of those big iconic songs, and that's Paranoid. I can't say anything bad about Paranoid. It's it's Black Sabbath's signature song. It's Ozzy's calling card, even to this day. That chugging riff, the main intro riff, is absolutely iconic. Feel of the whole thing, it's very compact. I don't know how long is the song. Does it break 3.5 minutes? It's short and to the point. It's Yeah, I mean, I can't say anything bad about it. If I had to say, well, why didn't you put it at number one then? Well, maybe it's just because the two songs after it had more of an impact on me, and still do. And I guess maybe just because it was sort of a shorter song and so straightforward, it lands at number three for me. But it's still, there's just no denying the importance of Paranoid in the canon in history of heavy metal. It's a very, very important song, and an important song for Sabbath and Ozzy. And so number three for me, Paranoid.
Number three. Okay, for number two for me is Paranoid. Could have easily been number one, and probably actually is, but when I say I try to be objective with this is one of the reasons that I switched this with the last song. Paranoid is probably, if it isn't my absolute favorite song of all time, it's my second favorite song of all time. I have two songs that I just love. One of them is Paranoid. The other one is Lazy by Deep Purple. Whenever I hear Lazy by Deep Purple, I will turn it up. I love that song. I love it. And likewise, I love Paranoid. And it is the song that made me a Black Sabbath fan. I've gone on to say that first Black Sabbath album I got was Never Say Die. I bought it because I was curious about what Black Sabbath sounded like. When I listened to it, I thought it was a little bit not what I expected, a little too sophisticated. So I put it aside. A couple years later, I heard Paranoid on the radio, and it just blew my mind. I love the vocals. I love Ozzy's voice. I love that slapback echo. I love the riff, the tempo. It's just a perfect rock song. And it's one of my all-time favorite songs. And I will never turn Paranoid off when it comes on the radio. I won't. If I don't turn it up, I'll at least listen to it from start to finish. I love Paranoid. But is it the main takeaway song? Is it the highest ranking song on Paranoid? I mean, obviously it's the title of the album, but I'm gonna have to say no. For me, some days it is, but if I'm being objective, it's not number one, but it's definitely number two. If it can't be number one, it has to be number two. So number two for me is Paranoid.
All right, that surprised me there. I thought you were going to have Paranoid as number one. Okay, number two for me is Electric Funeral. This song, from the first time I heard it, you mentioned it, that wah wah guitar sound in the beginning, the intensity of that, the doom of that, it set me off in a trajectory that I wanted more stuff like this. It was sort of like I put it on a pedestal, and it was like, where can I find things that give me this same feeling as Electric Funeral? And it's something that's still to this day, those kind of riffs, single note riffs that are just very minor key, slow. Both of us are big doom metal fans, and if I were to, when I heard Electric Funeral at 10 years old, I didn't know what doom metal was. I don't know if anybody knew it. If doom metal hadn't been coined, that phrase hadn't been coined yet, I don't think. But I can see where my love for doom metal and love for dark, ominous sounding things come from. And I can trace it back to Electric Funeral. That riff at the beginning is just absolutely evil. It's so sinister sounding. The verses, Ozzy's, the way Ozzy sings that song, "Light Electric Funeral," when that riff comes in, it is just like, wow, man, like earth's colliding, and it's so big, it's so powerful. it's just an amazing riff. It's an amazing song, and it's really, I can just remember hearing that for the first time and just being like, wow, this is my first Sabbath album. I never heard anything like this before. This, it was Kiss, Ted Nugent, and AC/DC, and I thought God of Thunder was heavy and scary. And then I heard this, and I was just like, forget about Kiss. This is like, yeah, this is in the lyrics, the apocalyptic lyrics, and everything just to sort of fit the mood of the song just perfectly. And it sent me on this road, put this in my brain, and this is where that seed was planted. So I always loved Electric Funeral. It's a song that it totally crankable, never skip over it. So it ranks pretty high up on the list here for me at number 2.
Yeah, I mean, as far as proto doom, Electric Funeral is the absolute quintessential proto doom song. One of the reasons I got into doom metal and subsequently started playing doom metal is because I loved Black Sabbath. I started hearing bands like Count Raven, Pentagram, Saint Vitus. Reminded me of Black Sabbath. I loved Black Sabbath, so I wanted to hear more of that kind of stuff. And I'm surprised that there were bands that sounded so similar to Black Sabbath. But the song Electric Funeral, some of the doom bands have probably, and various bands have kind of rewritten Electric Funeral a few different times. And that's a testament of what a great song it is. It's like I said, it came in at number 5 for me, but on some level, on a certain mentality, it could have easily been number 1. Most of these songs were interchangeable for different reasons. I mean, the only 2 songs that I couldn't put higher in my ranking would be Planet Caravan and Iron Man. But any of the remaining songs, they probably could have, maybe not number 1, but certainly number 2. Electric Funeral could have been number 2. Fairies Wear Boots, Hand of Doom. And so Electric Funeral, man, it's groundbreaking in that I would say that between that and the self-titled song are the 2 cornerstones of an entire music genre.
Yeah.
So yeah, real important. So that was your number 2?
2, yep. So number 1, I guess we only have one left, so between the 2 of us. So, and we both have the same number, only song left.
Yep. War Pigs. Wow. To say it's iconic is sort of an understatement. Who doesn't love War Pigs? The socially conscious lyrics became sort of a hallmark of Black Sabbath. The riffs, everybody's just Tony's solos, his riffs, Bill's drums, gives you bass. Love Ozzy's voice. The fact that he's singing, and it's still amazing when you listen to it. The way his voice is just crystal clear. He's just singing, and he doesn't have, right there, that Ozzy isn't a technically great singer, but the way that he's singing with total confidence, voice just coming out unaccompanied by music, it's pretty amazing. It doesn't waver, doesn't crack. It's just delivering those first few lines of each couple lines of the verses, and it's like it's pretty amazing. It's kind of soul stirring, and in some ways it still is after all these years. It's an iconic song. It's a brilliant song. So of all the songs on Paranoid, War Pigs is probably the most important to me anyway, and obviously you feel the same way.
Yeah. I mean, it's a song that you would think I might be burnt out on it, because next to Iron Man, it's probably in Iron Man, Paranoid, War Pigs are the ones that get played all the time. But it's a song I never tire of. The intro to the song with the air raid siren is just so epic. We're talking about doom here, so ominous, and Ozzy's vocals, like he said, the way they're so piercing, and they're so I don't want to say dry, but it takes you back to a time where it sounds like you're hearing him. You can hear him right next to the microphone.
Yeah,
Doesn't sound like there's a whole bunch of effects and everything on it. It's like it's just kind of right there. It just, man, like just that opening chord of the song is just the way that opening chord hits. It's just has so much weight to it.
yeah.
And I saw them on one of the Oz fests that they were on, and it was the one in Camden when Rob Halford sang. Ozzy didn't come out, and I think it was. I can't remember now, but I just remember that it had just gotten dark. They had these big screens out, and they before the band started, they were showing these images of slow motion, like Vietnam era helicopters sort of slowly moving in and like at half speed. So it was like, whoa, 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 like, that kind of sound as these helicopters moved in. And then the air raid siren came on, and they had a big curtain covering the stage. So you hear the air raid siren and the curtain's there, and the curtain drops from the top, big, huge curtain, drops all the way down. And it was timed absolutely perfectly. And right when it hit the ground, that opening chord hit. So I was like, boom. And I'm getting shivers thinking about it,
Yeah.
because it was like I thought the earth had opened up or something. It was like like something like when people they're hit by a light or something, and like they're inspired. It
Yeah.
was like
That's
a
the kind of
religious
song it is.
experience. It was the biggest, heaviest chord I ever heard in my entire life.
Yeah.
And this, and they're not tuned down on this record. This is just, and he doesn't have some big, super oversaturated guitar sound. But man, when that first chord drops in this song, it's just like, boom! It's so big,
Yeah.
it's so powerful. The jamming in this song when they're going off there, and Geezer's just going
Yeah.
crazy on the bass.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all going crazy and just jamming. It captures that energy. You never get something like this in the era of Pro Tools. This is just guys going for it.
Yeah.
In the studio, you can just picture them all sort of maybe in a circle or something, and then just all jamming on this,
Yeah.
together. And that ending, it's one of my favorite moments in heavy metal. I say this all the time. This is like when I'm at a show and they're playing music before the main band comes on over the PA system. A lot of times they'll play War Pigs. And that moment at the end of the song, when the guitar goes into the bum, 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 down, 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 that is so epic. Everybody sings along. If I'm at a show and they're playing that over the PA, everybody's singing along with that. When you see Sabbath live, everybody sings along with that.
Yeah.
It's so epic. It's everything I love about heavy metal. It's everything I love about Black Sabbath. I don't know if you saw, what was that it was a TV show. It was on Netflix, or it was like a metal themed show. This kid's trying to get a band together. Rob Halford's in it. He makes an appearance.
Metal Lords or something.
Yeah. Something like it was pretty silly and everything. But there's a kid learning how to play drums. I don't know if you saw it, but he's learning how to play drums, and the guitar player's trying to get him to learn how to play drums. He's like, "Here's a list of songs you got to learn." And so they keep showing these images of him learning to play War Pigs, and he's starting off and he's not really doing it, and they're intercutting it with pictures of Bill Ward, and he's there, and eventually he's getting better and better at it, and then his hair's getting longer, his she's cutting the sleeves off on his shirt, and then it's just like, yeah, man, it's like, this is just a song. It's just a great song. When I think about songs that embody the spirit of heavy metal, if somebody asked me, "Hey man, can you make me a playlist?" I've never heard any heavy metal. Can you make me a playlist? I would put this on there, because it's such a great song. It's such an iconic song for Black Sabbath. It's a song I never tire of. Like if it does come on the radio, I just turn it up.
No,
it's
I'm the same
just
way.
fantastic.
It's almost like a sacrilege to change the channel on War Pigs. Not that
Yeah.
I want to, but yeah, no, it's a great song. It's somewhat of a protest song in its own way. Part heavy metal anthem. It's horror. There's an element of horror to it with some of the imagery that are in the lyrics.
The
but the
Satan laughing
line,
spreads his
that's his
wings.
wings, yeah.
That line
And of
is
course, there's always that the two songs in this album that the lyrics are sometimes mistaken for other words, like on Paranoid. What is the line? Wish I could end my life.
yeah, yeah.
It's too late. And on this, end of God has struck the hour.
I
But
tell you to enjoy
I
life.
tell you to enjoy
Everybody
life.
thinks
I
I
wish
tell
I
you
could,
to
but it's too
enjoy life.
late. Uh, in War Pigs, the end of God has struck the hour is mistaken when the actual lyric is and as God has struck the hour.
Okay.
At least it's so is written. It does sound like Ozzy is saying end of God has struck the hour. Maybe he is saying that. Maybe he got confused and thought, I'm just going to take the liberty here and say end of God has struck the hour.
I always thought it was hand of God has struck the hour. That's what I thought it was for the longest time until I finally saw the
When I
lyrics.
was a kid, I bought We Sold Our Souls for Rock and Roll music book because it had the lyrics to most of the songs on We Sold Our Souls for Rock and Roll. And that's the only way that I knew some of the lyrics. And I saw that because I thought that end of God has struck the hour. And it said, and as God has struck the hour. Now, if I'm wrong, I'm sure somebody will make a comment. But that's how it was in that music book. Now maybe it's been, people have taken liberties over it. I've written the lyrics on you might see it on the internet and somebody just figured it out phonetically, but as far as how it was written, the lyrics were and as God has struck the hour, which doesn't probably make as much sense as end of God has struck the hour, figuratively speaking, of course. Powerful lines, great phrases, melodies, like we said already, Ozzy's voice in the beginning. It's just, it's a powerful song. It's a heavy song. It's just one of the best Black Sabbath songs. No matter how many times you hear it, you just have to say, wow, it's an incredible song, because it is. Number
All right,
one,
there you go.
War Pigs.
War Pigs #1 for both me and Darren. All right, there you go. There's our ranking of the songs on the Paranoid album. Hard to do, iconic, legendary album in heavy metal and for Black Sabbath. So let us know what you think of some of our picks. Let's hear some of yours. How would you rank the songs on this classic album? Okay, let us know in the comments down below, and we will see you at the next Sabbath Sunday.